The skies over Alandra, Earth's last great orbital colony, shimmered as the defense grid pulsed to life. Energy beams crisscrossed the darkness, holding back the relentless advance of the Velari Dominion, an empire notorious for grinding resistance into submission. The Velari flagship Eminence hovered ominously in the void, its jagged hull reflecting the light of Earth's sun. Commander Lyra Ashen, head of Earth's recently unified Coalition Defense Fleet, CDF, stood rigid on the bridge of her flagship, the Aegis Ascendant. The air was tense, her crew glued to their stations as warnings lit up the consoles. They were vastly outnumbered. Earth's fledgling fleet was dwarfed by the sheer scale of the Velari Armada. Yet Lyra's gray eyes showed no fear. If Earth was to fall, it would do so with defiance, not capitulation. "We're picking up a hail from the Eminence," reported Lieutenant Kale, his voice tight. "Should I patch it through?" Lyra nodded, folding her arms as the massive hologram of the Velari commander flickered into view. Grand Executor Tellis Valar, his scaled visage twisted into a smirk, leaned closer, his golden eyes gleaming. "Humans," he began, his voice dripping with mockery. "Do you honestly think this display will deter us? Surrender your colonies and your homeworld now, and the Dominion might allow some of you to live." Lyra stepped forward, her expression unyielding. "You speak of mercy, Executor, yet you've offered nothing but annihilation to every world you've conquered. Earth is not a name you will carve into your ledger, it's a name that will haunt you." Tellis's smirk faltered. Bold words for a species barely capable of leaving its atmosphere a century ago. "Very well, Commander. Let this be your end." The transmission cut abruptly, and the Velari fleet surged forward. "Prepare for incoming fire," Kale barked, his hands flying across his console. The first volley of plasma bolts hammered against the Aegis Ascendant's shields, sending shudders through the hull. Lyra grabbed a handhold, steadying herself as alarms blared. All around them, smaller human vessels scrambled to hold formation. The Velari were relentless, their weaponry overwhelming Earth's defenses. "We can't hold this line," Kyle muttered under his breath. But Lyra caught the words. "We're not retreating," she said firmly. "Activate the Luminous array." Kale's head snapped toward her. "But Commander, we haven't fully tested it." "Do it," Lyra snapped. "The Dominion believes they're facing a fractured species held together by scraps of ingenuity. It's time to show them what they're really up against." As Kale keyed in the commands, the Aegis Ascendant's hull began to glow. Panels shifted and locked into new configurations, revealing a network of shimmering nodes. A low hum filled the air, building to an ear-splitting crescendo as arcs of energy surged between the nodes. The Luminous array, humanity's most advanced energy weapon, was about to debut. "Target the lead assault carrier," Lyra ordered. "Fire." A blinding beam of light erupted from the ship, slicing through space and spearing the Dominion's lead carrier. The vessel erupted in a fiery burst, scattering debris and plasma across the battlefield. The silence on the bridge was deafening as everyone processed what had just happened. For a fleeting moment, the relentless advance of the Velari faltered, but then something unexpected happened. "Commander," Kale said, his voice shaking, "their second wave is deploying, and they're cloaked." Lyra's stomach turned cold. The Dominion wasn't just testing their defenses, they were studying them. "Send word to all ships," she ordered. "We're moving to Phase 2. Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded with the weight of what was to come. The battle for Alandra was only beginning, and Earth's survival hung by a thread. The bridge of the Aegis Ascendant was quiet, save for the hum of machinery and the occasional clipped command. Commander Lyra Ashen stood at the center, her sharp gaze fixed on the tactical display. The Velari cloaked ships were still invisible to human sensors, but their intent was clear: surround, strike, and obliterate. "We've lost contact with Sentinel Wings 2 and 4, Commander," Kale reported. His fingers danced across the console, his brow furrowed. "Whatever these cloaked ships are using, it's cutting through our forces like a scalpel." Lyra clenched her jaw. "Their cloaks make them overconfident. Let's make that their mistake." She turned to Chief Engineer Ara Senna, stationed at the Auxiliary Systems console. "Activate the Umbra Pulse Grid." Ara's fingers froze mid-command. You want to use the grid now? It's designed for planetary defense, not fleet operations. I know exactly what it's designed for, Lyra interrupted. But if we don't flush those ships out, Alandra will fall. Implement the grid. Ara hesitated only a moment before nodding. Yes, Commander. The Aegis Ascendant's hull shifted again, this time emitting faint, oscillating waves of energy that spread out in all directions. The Umbra Pulse Grid, a device originally meant to detect cloaked incursions on Earth's surface, now expanded its reach across the void of space. Lyra held her breath as the first pulses rippled outward. "Contact!" Kyle shouted, his eyes lighting up. Red markers bloomed on the tactical display as Velnari ships flickered into view, their cloaks rendered useless by the grid. "Now we see you," Lyra muttered. "All ships, target the cloaked vessels immediately. No quarter." The humans struck with precision and ferocity. Fighters swarmed the revealed ships, and battleships unleashed volleys of kinetic rounds and energy beams. One by one, the cloaked Velnari vessels fell, their advanced technology no match for humanity's newfound advantage. But the Dominion wasn't finished. "Commander," Ara's voice broke through the rising cheers on the bridge. "They're deploying planetary disruptors." Lyra's heart sank. The disruptors were massive constructs capable of unleashing concentrated waves of energy that could destabilize planetary shields and destroy Alandra. "Targets acquired," Call confirmed. 3 disruptors, escorted by heavy cruisers. Lyra didn't hesitate. "Focus the Luminous array on the nearest disruptor. Assign wings 1 and 3 to intercept the other 2. Kale's hand hovered over the targeting controls. "Commander, if we concentrate fire on the disruptors, we'll be leaving the Ascendant vulnerable to the main fleet." "We have no choice," Lyra said firmly. "If those disruptors go online, it's over." The Luminous array hummed to life once more, its energy building as the crew worked in synchronized precision. The beam lanced through the void, striking the first disruptor dead center. The massive construct shuddered before detonating, taking 2 Velnari cruisers with it. Before anyone could celebrate, alarms blared across the bridge. "Incoming assault waves," Kyle yelled. 2 battle groups targeting our position." The Aegis Ascendant shuddered as enemy fire slammed into its shields. Sparks flew from consoles and the lights flickered momentarily. "Shield integrity at 63%, Ara reported. Her voice was steady, but the tension in her eyes betrayed the gravity of the situation. Lyra grabbed the edge of her command chair as another barrage rocked the ship. "Send wings 5 and 6 to intercept those groups. Keep the pressure on the remaining disruptors." "Yes, Commander," Kyle acknowledged, barking orders into his headset. The battle was chaos. Human ships moved like swarms of wasps, harrying the larger Velnari vessels with relentless assaults. Explosions lit the darkness as ships on both sides were destroyed, their wreckage scattering across the battlefield. But then a chilling sight appeared on the display. "Commander," Kale said, his voice dropping. "We have a new contact. It's massive." Lyra turned to the viewport as a shadow eclipsed the stars. A Velnari super dreadnought, the Oblivion Spear, emerged from behind the Velnari lines. Its silhouette was unlike anything they had faced before, bristling with weaponry and a pulsating core that radiated a deep crimson. They were holding it in reserve, Lyra muttered, her mind racing. The super dreadnought wasn't just another ship, it was a statement. The Dominion was prepared to obliterate Alandra, no matter the cost. "Orders, Commander?" Kale asked, his voice tight. Lyra's eyes remained locked on the looming behemoth. "Focus all fire on the remaining disruptors. We'll deal with the dreadnought after." "But, Commander, that's an order," she barked. Even as she spoke, Lyra knew the fight ahead would push them to their limits. The Oblivion Spear was coming for them, and they would need every ounce of strength and ingenuity to survive. The Oblivion Spear loomed over the battlefield like a leviathan, its sheer size casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the stars. The Aegis Ascendant's sensors struggled to quantify its dimensions, but its presence was unmistakable, a monstrous testament to Velnari engineering and their ruthless intent. "Commander, Disruptor 2 is down," Kale reported. Relief was evident in his voice, but it was short-lived. "The last one is still active, and the Oblivion Spear is moving into range. Lyra didn't falter. Deploy the echelon maneuver. Bring our heavier ships forward to shield the fighters while they target that disruptor. If we fail to take it out, nothing else matters. Kale's hands moved swiftly over his console, and the fleet began to shift formation. The Aegis Ascendant, flanked by its largest cruisers, became the spearhead of a defensive wall. Smaller, more agile ships weaved through the gaps, heading straight for the disruptor. "Disruptor escorts engaging," Ara called out. "They're throwing everything they've got at us." The humans pushed forward, but the Velnari weren't making it easy. Their cruisers unleashed salvos of plasma bolts and energy spikes, tearing through the attacking squadrons. Fighters spiraled out of control, some consumed in fiery explosions, others limping back to the safety of the main fleet. "Commander, we're losing ships fast," Kale said grimly. "The disruptor is charging." "Not if we have anything to say about it," Lyra interrupted. "Ara, activate the Scythe protocol." Ara froze. "The Scythe?" "Commander, that's experimental. It could destabilize our reactor." "And if that disruptor fires, there won't be a reactor left to worry about," Lyra snapped. "Activate it." Reluctantly, Ara initiated the protocol. The lights on the Aegis Ascendant dimmed as power rerouted to the weapon systems. The ship's hull began to glow faintly, arcs of electricity crackling along its surface. "Target lock acquired," Kyle announced, his voice laced with both tension and awe. "Fire!" Lyra commanded. The Ascendant unleashed a barrage unlike anything seen before. Blades of condensed energy tore through the void, slicing cleanly through the Velnari escorts. The disruptor, caught mid-charge, erupted in a fiery cascade as its core was breached. A cheer rose on the bridge, but Lyra's eyes were already on the tactical display. "Redirect focus to the Oblivion Spear. We're not done yet." The super dreadnought was advancing steadily, its weapons array beginning to glow ominously. The first salvo came without warning, a crimson beam that vaporized an entire human cruiser in a single strike. "Commander, their weapons are off the scale," Kyle yelled. "Our shields won't hold against that kind of firepower." Lyra gritted her teeth. "Then we don't let them fire again. All ships focus on their primary weapon systems. I want that core exposed." The fleet converged on the Oblivion Spear, their combined firepower hammering its shields. But the Velnari behemoth was well protected. Smaller Velnari ships swarmed the humans, forcing them to divert resources to defense. "Ara," Lyra said, turning to her chief engineer. "How much damage can we take?" Ara's eyes were wide but resolute. "Not much more, Commander. But if we can get close enough, we might be able to overload their systems with an EMP strike." Lyra considered the risk. An EMP would disable their own systems temporarily, leaving them vulnerable. But it might be their only chance. "Prepare the EMP payload," she ordered, "and plot a collision course. If we're going down, we're taking that thing with us." Kale whipped around, disbelief etched across his face. "Commander, you can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," Lyra cut him off. "We've come too far to lose now." As the bridge crew scrambled to implement her orders, Lyra took a steadying breath. Her mind flickered with memories of Earth, the reason they were fighting, the billions of lives depending on them to hold the line. "We've got this," she said, more to herself than anyone else. The Aegis Ascendant surged forward, cutting through the chaos with unyielding purpose. Velnari fire rained down, shaking the ship to its core, but Lyra refused to slow. "Commander, EMP is armed," Ara reported. Her voice was firm, but her hands trembled slightly. "Kyle," Lyra said, her tone softer now, "send a message to the fleet. Tell them to fall back. If this doesn't work..." Kyle nodded, his voice catching as he relayed the order. "All ships retreat to safe distance. The Ascendant will handle the dreadnought." The bridge fell silent as the Ascendant closed the gap. The Oblivion Spear loomed larger and larger, its weapons glowing ominously. "Brace for impact," Lyra said. The countdown began. The Aegis Ascendant hurtled toward the Oblivion Spear like a meteor, its engines burning bright in defiance of the odds. The ship's hull was battered, shields flickering under relentless Velnari fire, but its purpose remained resolute. "Commander," Ara's voice came through the chaos. EMP charge is primed and set to detonate on impact. Lyra gripped the edge of her console. Understood. Kyle, how close are we? 2 kilometers and closing fast, Kyle replied, his voice strained. We're within their kill zone. The Oblivion Spear's main cannon began to glow, a malevolent crimson that threatened to consume everything in its path. Velari escorts swarmed the Ascendant, their firepower hammering the ship from every angle. On board, the crew worked furiously to maintain systems, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Shield integrity at 5%, Ara called out. We won't survive another direct hit. Lyra's jaw tightened. We don't need to. All hands, prepare for impact. This is it. As the Ascendant drew closer, the Oblivion Spear unleashed its primary weapon. A searing beam of energy lanced out, narrowly missing the human flagship as Lyra executed a desperate maneuver, the ship's engines groaning under the strain. Commander, they're locking onto us again, Kyle shouted. No time for evasive action, Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. Hold course. The Ascendant barreled forward, ignoring the volleys of fire tearing through its remaining defenses. Within moments, it was within a hair's breadth of the Oblivion Spear, its prow aimed directly at the super dreadnought's core. Activate the EMP, Lyra commanded. Ara slammed her hand onto the console. EMP deployed! The Ascendant's systems went dark as a pulse of electromagnetic energy radiated outward, enveloping both the human ship and the Oblivion Spear. The battlefield fell silent for a brief moment, the Velari dreadnought's weapons flickering and its escort spiraling out of control. Direct hit on their core, Kyle exclaimed, his face illuminated by the flicker of returning systems. The Oblivion Spear is destabilizing. Lyra steadied herself as the Ascendant's emergency power came back online. The view outside was one of sheer devastation. The Oblivion Spear's hull cracked open like a fractured shell, its glowing core pulsing erratically. Explosions erupted along its surface, tearing through its massive frame. They're going critical, Aura reported. We need to pull back now. Engines to full, Lyra ordered. Get us clear of the blast radius. The Ascendant limped away, its engines sputtering but determined. Behind them, the Oblivion Spear shuddered violently, its core finally collapsing in on itself. The resulting explosion lit up the void, a brilliant wave of energy consuming the Velari ships caught in its wake. Cheers erupted on the bridge as the crew watched the massive dreadnought crumble into nothingness. Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of relief, her shoulders sagging as the tension drained from her body. Status report, she asked. Kyle's grin was visible even through his exhaustion. We're still here, Commander. And the Velari? Not so much. The remaining Velari ships, leaderless and disoriented, began to scatter. The human fleet, regrouping at a safe distance, pressed the advantage, picking off stragglers and securing the battlefield. Lyra stood tall, addressing her crew. We've done the impossible today. The Oblivion Spear is gone, and the Velari know Earth is not theirs for the taking. The cheers grew louder, a mix of pride and disbelief at what they had accomplished. But Lyra's expression remained serious as she turned to Kale. Send a message to High Command. Let them know we've won this battle, but the war isn't over. The Velari will come back, and we need to be ready. As the Aegis Ascendant and the rest of the fleet began their return to Earth, Lyra gazed out at the stars. The victory was monumental, but the cost was heavy. Humanity had proven its strength, its resilience, and its resolve. The galaxy had underestimated them, but now they knew Earth would not fall. Lyra whispered to herself, a promise for the battles yet to come. This is our home, and we'll fight for it, no matter the cost. The stars glimmered in the silence, as if bearing witness to humanity's defiance. The war was far from over, but for the first time, Earth had hope and a fighting chance.